Hi, and welcome to another episode of Stars and Startups with me, Varun Vermidi. Our guest today is Dr. Manuj Garg, co founder of MyUpchar. MyUpchar has been on fire since it launched in 2016, recording 1 million hits on their website within a few months of launch. Their vernacular health content boasts of over 150 million views a month across all platforms. Being on the forefront of digital health, they have an incredible engagement from their audience and have signed up over 50,000 doctors to their platform and have offered more than a million consultations. Manuj shares how they've stayed laser focused on serving the underserved masses of India, the challenges and the journey that lay ahead. Now, over to the show. So, Manuj, it's been a while. A lot has happened since the time we actually caught up last. How
Yeah.
is lockdown treating you? What's keeping you busy?
Uh, I mean, if what's I've actually gotten busier, if anything. So we're a healthcare company, and we do everything from creating medical content to uh, tele-consultations, medicine delivery, and everything else in between. And we've kept all engines firing. So it's just become a lot harder to do business, even though there is a lot more demand for all our work, from verified medical information to the need to speak with doctors, medicines because we're all locked at home, etc., etc. So, but doing business has become harder operationally. So, if anything, we're all working longer and under severe constraints. I mean, it's no different from anybody else, but we still have to deliver. If a patient needs to speak with a doctor, they do. If a patient needs medicines, they do, right? Uh, and it's up to us to navigate whatever obstacles there are.
When you guys heard about lockdown and few days of quarantine, started with a Sunday, and then kind of extended from there on, did the business go through some kind of restructuring in terms of how to work from home? Your office looks pretty well set up, so I'm guessing all this was pre-planned.
Well, my home office was always set up to work from home. Not that I ever did, but I do like maintaining a good home office. But in terms of my upchart, we kind of saw this coming, so we had some prep work done already. Um, so so it was just a matter of ensuring that everybody had all the right equipment that they needed to work from home. We didn't exactly know when it would come, but all the systems that needed to be put in place had largely been either put in place or had been planned for. Only the ones that required an expense, those we didn't do right away, like setting up a new cloud infrastructure for our call center, and other things that we didn't. And then we just like drove around all night, one night, delivering computers to everybody at their home.
Which is kind of
That,
mind blowing when you think about it, right? When a lot of these companies, and at Wellmo, we work with some insurers, and one of the things I heard from the insurer was our team hasn't been able to respond because they're only used to having a desktop. So a lot of our operation staff don't
uh-huh.
have desktops. They don't have laptops rather at home. So we started not getting policies for days on end, and a lot of this was happening. And I was really thinking to myself. So when I joined, when Citrus got acquired by PayU, the whole team, and we have a service team, the team that I kind of took over. Um, they were all working off desktops too. And one of the first requests I got from them was, "Hey, can we move to a laptop? Because then when there are days that we have to actually respond to customers, etc., I have the ability to log in and check. And it's important as a as a response team. You're talking about customer experience. So it is mind blowing that a lot of companies still persisted with desktops even to this day, where laptops are probably cheaper to maintain.
Yes. So in our case, there is some work which requires laptops, which requires desktops. Sorry. So we do a lot of video production. We do a lot of heavy 3D animations, 2D animations. So those don't really work off a laptop. You need very heavy duty, high end machines that we use. So all all the guys in those teams, they needed their desktops. So we tried to convince them to work off their laptops and use TeamViewer or some other remote login tool. And they said it just doesn't work. They need their machine. So yeah, we filled up our cars with, I don't know, what was the count? Like 25 desktops, took several rounds, but we delivered to every corner of Delhi, NCR.
That should count as an essential service right now.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, give me 1 second. Yeah, I mean, delivery of everything is pretty much essential service, like I would say. But the authorities have their plans and they have reasons for those. Our sort of universe gets limited to anything medical, and those we've had support on. So we've been fortunate while the situation keeps changing on the ground, authorities have been very, very supportive. And if you think of the person who's, let's say, take a simple example of somebody who's issuing an e-pass. Just practically speaking, the first they hear of it as well is probably on TV, like you and I do, or through a WhatsApp message, and then information trickles down through official channels. And in the meantime, 20 guys like me are probably knocking on his or her door asking for the e-pass, right? So they're also dealing with a situation which evolves in real time. So, it just requires everyone to be patient and to just understand the other person's perspective. And then eventually, quickly enough, things do work out.
No, I think that's been a story all around. I think everybody's trying to do the best they can so that they can get things moving, especially at this hard time, right? I think everybody's coming together and supporting. Being a bureaucrat or the guy who's managing your society, probably the same kind of impact. So
is anybody allowed to come in or go out of your society?
Not really. I mean, I think there are cops on every street corner questioning, what are you doing outside? And you have to prove that you have a face mask inside your car. So I think a lot of people are just deciding, it's not worth the hassle to step out.
Yes.
Manuj, I know we can go on this topic. It's fairly deep. We're going to get into a little bit about the COVID-19 impact on MyUpchar a little later in this podcast. I just want to take a step back to 2014, 2015, right before you started working on MyUpchar. So you were doing another startup prior to MyUpchar, right? And how was that going? It was something in printed advertising.
Yeah, so it was a startup that we were trying to organize the print ads market. So not just magazines and newspapers that we get in our homes in big cities, but if you go beyond that, the world is quite big. And when I say print, I meant anything offline. So think of like a Google ad exchange for everything that's not online. I don't think anybody's still done it. If somebody wants to take it up, I'd be happy to see them succeed. But no, we had shut it down well before I got started on MyUpchar. So when I joined Rajat to start MyUpchar, I was on a bit of a break. So I was mostly just doing yoga and living that life when Rajat convinced me to come on board.
Very cool. So what are the initial thesis between you and Rajat to go after this market? I've read a little bit around being the WebMD for India and the Bharat audience. What was the real insight? I know Rajat also was working on something of a vernacular e-commerce platform, etc. Was that
So
you started?
Yeah, so actually Rajat already had a startup that he was running, which pivoted into becoming MyUpchar. So it was a e-commerce platform that sold Indian goods. So everything from Ayurveda to Indian clothes to Indian books to anything else artisanal. Um, and the website was entirely in English. So one day he converted part of the website, specifically Ayurveda, into Hindi, and soon Ayurveda became 50% of his business. And that's when we met and we sort of double clicked into it, and we saw that there's this huge world around the need for medical information and the need for access to medicine. And when I say medicine, not medicines, but like healthcare, access to healthcare, that is entirely unmet, and it overlaps very strongly with the language preferences of the population. So anybody who's primarily an English speaker or consumes their media in English, you see that they typically also have access to good healthcare in India. It's not 100% overlap, but it's strong enough where you think that there is something going on there. So the simple insight was that we're going to try to create content in Indian languages. It serves first of all, that need in itself. And then we can go beyond that. And if we build a large enough audience, we can build a stack of services on top of that, which is what we did. So the goal was to go well beyond what WebMD does. WebMD is largely stay focused on a medical platform, and they try to make their money through advertising, etc., which is not the route we've gone. We've not tried to make any money on ads or anything of that sort. We are a healthcare company. We're not a media company trying to survive off of ads.
When you look at the state of healthcare in India, you probably have the best view from the position you're in.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem far-fetched to say this is a very required product, probably because today they call it the WhatsApp university, where people are sharing random things on WhatsApp, where people seem to believe it. It doesn't matter what the source is. And then there is organized players like you offering content. What are the things that really stood out in terms of the state of healthcare, state of people's thought process when it came to understanding their medical needs?
So, I mean, like the full analysis would take a while to dig into, but see, there is no structured data set available on mostly anything in India, let alone something like the healthcare needs of people in tier 2 and tier 3. So it was largely a huge set of heuristics. So you come at it from multiple angles. You look at what's happening globally. So there is WebMD, there is Healthline, there is Mayo Clinic. Together, at that time when we started, they were pulling 300 million visitors every month. And that's in a country where, that's quite a lot, right? So the population of the US is 300 million. And these websites together pull 300 million people. Sure, some of it is from abroad, but largely from the US. In a country where there is real healthcare, right? So despite having access to healthcare, people have the need for healthcare information, right? And then you can walk around the globe and you'll see that everywhere there is a health website which gives credible, legit medical information. There are a couple in China, there's one in Japan, there'll be one in every European country. And that's true everywhere except India. Because for whatever reason, we have that our web was entirely in English. Sure, there are some government websites which are in Hindi, but whoever got information of a government website, right? So you're not going to get it from the public sector. So it has to be from a private initiative. But there was nothing, and largely because it was guys like you and me who created the web in India, right? And we come from the English-speaking world, right? As much as we're even talking in English right now, even though we talk about people who don't talk in English. So when we create, what we have seen is the web in English, and when we set out to create it, we created it in English because that's the world we know. What we don't realize is that the world we live in is this big, and India is like, 1,000 times bigger than that. Um, it's sort of like saying, if you fly from Delhi to Bombay, uh, the world that you live in, the airplane crosses it in the first 3 minutes. The rest of the 2 hour journey is all Bharat. Think of it like that.
That's a very
And that's
interesting anecdote to kind of capture that.
that's exactly how I used to think of it when we started. Used to be like when I used to be flying into a city, I was like, okay, this is where I live, this is the world that I know. And the last 2 hours was entirely, a world unknown to me, or a world that we don't think about at all. And that's literally like that small a part of India. It's like a speck, you know, on the map of India.
But that's true. You've maybe the last numbers that you've probably shared publicly is 120, 150 million views across the platform in this Bharat, right? And
Yeah.
I guess the real parallel for this would be the geo effect, because I think geo also went after this audience to a large extent, saying, how do I make this more accessible, usable from a telecom standpoint, where we're looking at, very different, acceptance, utilization, needs, so to speak.
So I'm not like super familiar with geo strategy, so I wouldn't want to draw a parallel. But yes, there is. If I talk about our user base, a significant number of those do happen to be geo users.
So, from these categories, we're talking about 120, 150 million views across the various platforms that MyUpchar puts content out on. How do
Mhm.
you? I mean, is that like a very focused attempt towards targeting these users?
Um, so yes and no, it's both ways. We did set out to serve this audience. So yes, if we're not serving them and serving somebody else, then we are missing the target. And also, when you do put the content out there, and your content is good, then a lot of discovery happens on its own as well. There's a lot of sharing that happens. If you run if you're constantly putting out good information on your website, somebody will read it once, maybe they'll come back again, they'll begin to develop a memory, they'll share an article, or they'll mention it to somebody else. And you can tell all this stuff because branded searches in Google begin to go up for you. Uh, and that happened. It took some time, but it definitely started happening in a significant way. And then if you get out on social media, and if you're able to navigate the jungle of social media, then you can really create a space for yourself where users will come and find you. So now for us, it's gone to an extent where if there is a social media channel where we're not present, and we do go and open up there, typically everybody knows us and says, well, welcome to, let's say I don't have a channel on ShareChat, suppose. We do, but let's say I didn't. So typically you'll see a comment and say, hey, welcome to ShareChat as well, because they know us from so many other places.
So that means you're creating these channels on all the other platforms as well to disseminate content and then drive traffic back to MyUpchar, or is it more like a branding exercise?
It works both ways. Most channels actually don't give you a way to bring audience directly back. Like you can put a link in YouTube, you can put a link in Facebook, not on Insta. You can put a link on Twitter, but typically that is not going to be how you're going to get most of your traffic. What it ends up being is more on the side of brand recognition and brand building, and then people are very adept now at just like finding. So if suppose we are able to adequately communicate that uh, you can actually connect with this doctor on our platform who's giving you this very important information, then people are very good at just going and finding your app or finding your website and navigating to meeting that doctor or talking to that doctor.
You mentioned earlier that Ayurveda was a very large aspect of content and traffic that was driving users to the website. And now we're talking about general content as such. Was there a shift that happened to move away from just Ayurveda?
No, no. So the Ayurveda thing that I mentioned was in Rajat's previous venture. Um, so he used to sell Ayurvedic medicines on his previous platform, and that, when converted to Hindi, led to a significant jump in business. So yes, we did write some home remedies and Ayurveda content initially, but we are largely we've been focusing on modern medicine, which is not to say that we're not doing homeopathy or Ayush in general. We do have some of that. There are doctors from these schools of medicine who come and create content with us. But there is, like, as of today, there is predominantly modern medicine.
Understood. In I was doing some reading and I learned that a lot of English speaking users ask questions very differently, or there are different questions that they ask on, say, other platforms like 1mg or anything else compared to the kind of queries that MyUpchar gets. Is this true?
Well, I don't know what kind of queries they get on 1mg or Tractor. We are very, very sort of focused on our users. I don't spend any time looking at what people are doing on their platforms. We just try to understand our users' needs and try to fulfill those. But like, a fact of life is, even those who speak in English in public, when they're in private and they call in an IVR service for information, वो भी हिंदी में जानकारी के लिए 2 ही दबाते हैं. They also don't press 1. You can find data on this, and you find data on how many people claim English to be their first language, and then you see how many people are choosing Hindi over English in their IVR preferences. You'll be amazed.
So which blows my mind even more. I mean, if you're saying that every single platform today we utilize on a regular basis is in English, are we saying that they're all misled and just trying to replicate the West and saying we just try to look cool and create platforms?
I don't know if they're trying to look cool. So I'm not saying that anybody is doing English to look cool. It's because you and I, the first thing we will do is we will say log in and add to cart, and we'll say read more. That because that's what we've seen. We'll not say aur padhiye, and we won't say isko kharidiye, and we won't say, that's just not where we come from. We think in English. So we are solving for the world we come from. And the world we've seen is this English world. It's not about being cool or not being cool. It's just natural, right? Now, why haven't we seen somebody from the Hindi world or the Tamil world or the Telugu world to actually come up and make this huge tech platform for that world and create a unicorn? It's because those guys are in tier 2, tier 3 towns where tech entrepreneurship does not really exist. It's a function of having graduated from a few colleges in Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, Calcutta, Chennai, Pune, the bigger cities. And that's why you see startup hubs there. So if you are a person who grew up in these cities and you've never really spent time in Bharat, you're not going to know what their problems are and what solutions they need, and you'll not make products for them. So all the tech entrepreneurship, while it's great, has been very, very limited to just the top 10 cities, you can say, right? And everybody else had largely been, I don't know, forgotten, ignored, choose your favorite word, because we just didn't realize it. Like all of us look at the world through our peepholes, tiny little peepholes we have, and our peepholes didn't go beyond the tier 1 world that we live in. And it's not hard to figure out why somebody from a small village didn't come and build a huge startup. Yes, there are stories of people who've come from modest means and done it, but they got exposure. And they were in environments where they learned that tech businesses can be built. You don't just have to be from Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore to build a huge business. There are others, but they got educated and they came educated in the right schools. They got the right company. They had the right friends, or they worked in the right job afterwards. Yes, of course, they were very driven individuals, and with the right opportunity and exposure, they did wonderfully well. But these guys are always going to be exceptions.
So when we talk about why they built for Bharat or this segment, we never talk about the ability to spend or their disposable income, so to speak. Is that a factor at all? I mean, because then ultimately you're then talking about metros, etc., where people are willing to spend and they probably have some money to put away as well, which is why e-commerce. I mean, even when we send shipments on e-commerce platforms, the deliverability in a city is far higher than say going into a second, smaller town. Hey guys, I just wanted to let you know about Wellmo. That's the startup that I run. We enable small businesses and startups to access an affordable health insurance program via our online platform app.wellmo.in. I will leave the link in show notes. You can check us out. You can add your employees, get set up right there on our dashboard on wellmo.in.
Okay, so you asked several questions in that one question. So you said A, is the ability to pay as high? Second, you said, are there logistical challenges with serving smaller cities? And because the ability is lower to pay, does that mean there are actually fewer business opportunities?
Yeah.
So I would say that, so first of all, the monetization story so here's the evolution of the vernacular world as we've seen it happen, because it all happened in front of us. So when we started 3.5 years back, when we pitched the concept of MyUpchar, and we said we'll do a vernacular content-led healthcare platform that will become the gateway for healthcare for 100 million Indian households. Like the question people asked us most often was, what are you guys smoking? And if we can purchase that on your platform. So, so nobody actually thought that even the data that we were presenting was believable, because that's just how people are. It takes a little bit of guts to open your eyes. Some people did see it, or because they actually can see data and react to it, or because they had experiences of their own. But the first 200 people we spoke with pretty much didn't get it. Because at that point, nobody thought that A, you can do anything with vernacular, and B, that content platforms lead to any business. Right? So those are the two problems. We struggled, we fought our way through it, and we managed to raise our funding. And within like an year of that, everybody started realizing that ShareChat's getting a lot of traffic, and Daily Hunt has so many million daily visitors. And wait, what? There is an India that lives not in Delhi, Bangalore, Bombay, Chennai, Pune. So there must be all these people, right? And then slowly what you see is people begin to talk about it, begin to write articles. And because every platform had kind of hit its saturation point, people are looking for, where does the next phase of growth come from? I think there were two probably distinct things that happened. One was that a lot of e-commerce companies, especially the biggest ones, Amazon and Flipkart, realized that a whole bunch of their business comes from smaller towns. Then there was this huge boost in content consumption from smaller towns, because geo, to your point earlier, geo came into being, and there was huge adoption of geo in tier 2, tier 3 India. And that data became public, that the maximum growth that's happening on Google's biggest platforms, search, YouTube, uh, anything else, Google Translate, whatever else you look at, is all coming from Indian languages. Then everybody started realizing that vernacular is the way to go, and it became obvious. Like once, then it's obvious, right? Of course, there are all these people who live there, and you have to do everything in all Indian languages. Who the hell ever thought that you shouldn't make a website in Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Bengali, Marathi, Kannada, so on and so forth, right? What idiots have you guys been so far? So, whereas at the same time, when I used to speak with my friends in France and Spain, they used to be like, "Why does your business exist?" I was like, "Wait, what do you mean? Why is your web not in your language in the first place?" I was like, well, I don't like. I mean, one can trace it back, but maybe it's a colonial hangover. Maybe it's I don't know what it is. Maybe we're just aping what we've seen and we can't think for ourselves. But that's where it is. But to anybody looking from outside, it was crazy to them that our web was entirely in English. Anyway, so coming back to that story, so then everybody started realizing vernacular. That song started, was the flavor of the day. So yes, there is a lot of traffic that you get, but truth be told, most still haven't figured out how it will be monetized. Right? Think of where the vernacular web is today, is where things were in just internet in general in India in, like, I wouldn't say 96, but like closer to 2006. The first generation of true tech entrepreneurs had already built what they wanted to, your Naukris and your other, I think there was a couple of job businesses that were the biggest. So there were guys who did build, but India wasn't ready for internet businesses. And then when Zomato and Google came in and they started offering services, when these guys started becoming big, that's when we started consuming. Even as late as I remember 2012, I remember asking my parents if he'd buy his regular supply of diabetes medicines from an e-pharmacy. And he said, no, he doesn't trust anything online. So there was an ability to pay. There was a willingness to pay. There was just a lack of trust because you're not familiar with this, right? Let's say you're a person who's never seen the internet. Yes, you and I have seen it. We've traveled abroad. We've lived our lives entirely online. I had shifted my life online when I was in the US. But
there was still a reluctance to pay
seen
online.
It ever.
There was a reluctance to pay online as well. If you remember, even the stories around Jabong and Flipkart and all these places, the moment they opened up COD or something, there was just like a a whole change in mindset. Again, there was the trusting part is massive. Why would I give somebody money before I get something in my hand?
Exactly, right? Because you don't know this online thing that you saw. You don't know what Flipkart is. You don't know what Jabong is. You don't know if your money will ever come back. So in the US, there was no, there was COD, but nobody ever used it. Everybody just paid using credit card because you'll get your refund back. The systems were there. When we built our first e-commerce companies, we just aped what was done there because we're good at that, right? We didn't actually try to understand what our people want, how our people are. And then finally somebody realized that it's not that we don't have credit cards, it's that we don't trust. So we'll actually have to do COD. Right? That's when things maybe started opening up. I don't know the data on it if that was the watershed moment, but I believe that helped a lot. And then slowly we've all switched to just paying online, right? I don't know, my family doesn't do any COD, my friends don't do COD, so maybe it has switched in a large way. In fact, COD is a pain now. Who wants to keep that much cash at home?
Yeah, I mean, after Demon, that became more mainstream. So we have Demon to thank for that. I mean, I think last couple of years has been pretty much in that direction. so to speak.
Right.
Was there a COD type moment in your business? Because I know that you spent a lot of time building content, etc. But was the thought to always be like, okay, we're going to do other services to make money? How do you think about it? Because you mentioned we don't do advertising, and that's not in our DNA at the moment.
Yeah. So yeah, this again just like ties in perfectly with the story I was telling. So with the vernacular, for us it was disbelief that this, well, just not disbelief, but just like lack of acceptance that this is even possible. Then the story started building. Then all the birds started singing, and now big businesses started with lots of users started happening. When I say big business, I mean lots of eyeballs. And then even the existing ones started creating their vernacular layers, right? But the monetization story hasn't come real yet. It's kind of like what was happening with India's first or second internet boom. And if you think of the current one as a third internet phase of India, then we are where the entire nation was 10 years back, or maybe uh, 15 years back. So it will happen despite all the challenges. See, if you say logistics is harder, like that's just a problem to solve. If that's going to scare you, then you're not going to be able to do anything. That can be solved. Um, if you say there isn't ability to pay, I don't think that's true. Because yes, there are some people who don't have ability to pay, but we're talking about people who have a smartphone, who have internet access, who are already who are already transacting on some platform. Maybe they've all made a purchase on Flipkart or Amazon or Myntra or something. So there is that willingness to pay. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence. So a lot of my friends are in manufacturing, and when Amazon and Flipkart started, they just used to love it because they're like, now earlier I used to have to like deal with the channel. Distributors were just like horrible to deal with. Now all I do is list my products on Amazon, and an order comes, and then an Amazon guy comes and takes the stuff, and I get my money like 15, 20 days later. And they're fine with that because they get their money from the channel. It's super hard to get the money. And most of their business was coming from tier to tier. So I don't think any of these problems are a long-term impediment. In the short term, yes, it's not as easy as just being in the US and saying, okay, there's already a FedEx or there's already a UPS, and you can just ride on that train. But even now, like when there are lots of companies like Delivery and Chatterfax and so on and so forth, who will. I mean, we work with Chatterfax now, and we work with Delivery, and then we also used to work with FedEx. It works out. Like if you really want to do it, you can figure out a way, and it's only going to get easier and easier in the next 5 years. I won't even say 10. So for monetization for us, sorry, go ahead.
I was just coming to monetization. So what are you monetizing now? How are you driving that?
Yeah. So monetization for us was no different. We try to do ads, and you don't get much money from ads on vernacular content. It's actually a waste of time to even put those ads on. We tried a lot of things like lead gen that you'd think that work very well in the first world, in the English world. Didn't work at all.
Like affiliate marketing?
Like affiliate marketing. Yeah, affiliate marketing didn't work at all. We tried to be a marketplace for, let's say, lab tests. Didn't work at all. People just sort of, when they came to our platform, they trusted us to do the transaction. They just didn't want us. They didn't want us to send them anywhere. Was our insight. Because they've just built trust with us, and then we said, now please go talk to them. So it was very important that on everything, the front was still MyUpchar. So that's a learning we came to after lots and lots of experiments. We just kept thinking it was a matter of the model not being right, the other platform not being right, some technical issue here or there, maybe switching is causing a problem. But we realized none of those things are a problem. It was simply that they've just developed enough trust to transact with us, and if you shove them into a different environment, it doesn't work. So we realized we have to do everything on our own. And when I say everything, we had decided we're a healthcare company, we're not a media company. So we have to provide digital health services. So that meant we had to build our own consultation suite. We had to get doctors on board because, mind you, with our content, we were getting a lot of users on board, but now you need to get doctors on board. You need to, so there was questions around what the regulation around consultation are. So there was a little bit of dancing around that. Then medicine delivery obviously is it's not an easy nut to crack, especially for a do it in tier 2, tier 3 India. So we've had to figure those things out. There have been multiple experiments that we've tried to do, and very little of the English web has worked. And we were a little guilty of it was easy for us also to just test, right? These are tried and tested models in the English world. Why shouldn't they work in the vernacular world? But they didn't. So we've kind of had to just sit down and say, okay, who is this user? What do they want? What can we provide? What can we build? Just basically, it's like the same Indian e-commerce realizing they need to do COD kind of story. So you have to think of new solutions. You can't just take solutions and copy paste them. Doesn't work.
So you had a journey of trying to figure out how to monetize, and you've kind of reached to a certain level, which is
So level of revenue, you mean?
I mean, business model, revenue, plan of action for the future.
I didn't hear that last bit.
Business model, revenue, plan of action to monetize. Because
some numbers we don't share publicly, but what I can tell you is the business model. So basically, what happens is people typically come to our platform to interact with the content. So they'll either read something, watch a video, look at a graphic, so on and so forth. And once they do enough of that, then they typically want to then talk to the doctor who created that content. So all content is created with or by doctors. Okay. So then we facilitate digital consultation with that doctor, because that's a doctor who's a partner with us, who helps us create content. And after that consultation, so within our consultation suite, doctors can create a prescription. It's a digital prescription which follows all regulations in and around the country. So you get a completely legitimate prescription. Before that, we've already done all the hard work of onboarding hundreds of thousands of doctors onto our platform. And that same prescription, then either the patient can choose to fill with us, or he or she can take it to a nearby chemist or whatever they want to do. So, and mind you, we haven't charged for this consultation. We paid the doctor for the consultation. And our expectation has been that if we provide a good enough experience prior to ordering the medicine, typically a patient, unless they have an immediate requirement of the medicine, as often is the case in acute conditions, they will order from us. And what we're seeing in the data is that enough people are ordering where this free consultation model is working for us. So free content, free consultation. So see, the content is kind of like a mini consultation itself, right? Where they're looking for some information. They found the basic amount of it, and they said, well, now I need the general version of it. Now I need something specific to myself. So I'll speak to a doctor. And now when the doctor has prescribed a lab test or a medicine, because I had such a good experience with this platform, I'll just order from them. And that's where we make our money. And then once people start transacting with us, there are repeat transactions, then they typically end up purchasing our membership service. It's like an Amazon Prime. So we call it the Health Card Plus, the Plus Health Card, sorry. And those guys, then their transaction behavior is like 30x of a non-Plus member. So then they really, really use it. So basically that membership is not just per person, it's per family. So if you bought it, it's applicable for your wife, your son, your daughter, your mother, your father, anybody who lives in your household. So
as a dependent, they can also ask their own queries to the doctor if
yeah,
any other specific.
Absolutely.
So for the whole family, so one person comes in through the door and basically they can cover the whole family. And it's a nice to have.
Yeah, exactly. So once you get one person, you get the whole family. It doesn't always happen, but most often it does. So even in our consultation, like the first question you have to answer is, are you asking this for yourself or somebody else? So that's the first question in our consultation flow. So also medically, it's kind of important to know, right, who the patient is. So yeah, so that's sort of what we have. That's the business model we've, after many iterations, come down to, where you offer a full suite of services digitally to a family. So it's not one service, it's not for one person. It has been built for the entire family to be serviceable just on their phone.
One of the criticism for e-health in general has been the fact that not a lot of these consults can be done on the web or through a phone. There has to be some tests, maybe looking at the tongue. I mean, typically when you walk into a doctor, they say do or of the eye, whatever, right? There's a little bit of basic tests that the doctor would want to do. Has that been an impediment to running these consults? How do you guys handle that?
Okay, great question. So there are obvious limitations to digital consultations. Some of it, so it's even just tele, you can say, look, I can't, it's a skin condition. Then the doctor can't look at the skin. Or if it's something in the mouth, then a dentist needs to look in the mouth, right? So without those, just tele doesn't work. So some of that can be solved with video. So the doctor can just look at your skin condition, or if somebody is seizing, the doctor can look at the seizure. If it's, typically people said teleconsultation is not for, or video consultation is not for emergency. Now there is the view that is developing is it's perfect for emergencies, because if somebody is seizing in your home, where the hell are you going to go and get a doctor from to first come and see them in a city like Delhi, these days notwithstanding, or in Bangalore, it will take you 2 hours before you're able to go get to a doctor, convince them to come home and see the person, right? Your tragedy's already happened. So it's actually now the view that's changing within the medical community is that it's actually wonderful for emergencies. But even other than that, in a lot of cases, video consultation can then solve what can't be solved by just teleconsultation. But in some cases, even video consultation is not enough, because sometimes the doctor needs to just palpitate your stomach and see where it's hurting, or the doctor needs to see how you're walking. And there is information that a doctor can just glean from how you're sitting, how you walk into the clinic, how you rest your hand, because if your hand goes, whatever, like I've seen 100 examples from clinicians where they've explained to me where all video and teleconsultations fall short. And I completely agree. There are areas where it does. But our data shows that 80% of all queries that we get can be solved by just teleconsultation. Of the remaining, 15% can be solved with video consultation. There are only 5% queries in our data which need a physical check, even in the first one. Sometimes you need a specialist consultation. Even in the real world, if you go to a GP, your GP can't solve a problem and you need a specialist. So we have an escalation matrix where if a GP can't solve your problem, then he or she would recommend you to a specialist within our network. Right? So yes, there are 5% of cases which cannot be solved digitally, but that is not a good enough reason to not do the other 95. So I'm solving not for 100%, I'm solving for 90 to 95%. That's good enough for me. I will not let perfect be the enemy of a whole lot. Well, the typically say good, but what we're doing is better than good. So it's not perfect. We can't solve 100% cases, but if we can in the future solve 90 to 95, we are okay with it. And this is now when telemedicine practice guidelines have come out post-COVID and post-lockdown. Even when there wasn't, we used to face a lot of pushback from doctors on whether doing teleconsultation is right, whether we are compromising patient interest, is it ethical? My standard response to that always was doing doing a teleconsultation is not unethical. Not helping a patient by any means necessary is unethical. If somebody has come to you because they don't have any doctor available locally, for you to shy away because the IMA said teleconsultations are not good is not doing your duty as a doctor. IMA has its own. I'm speaking publicly against the IMA because IMA has been Luddites since their inception. So
I think most traditional businesses have been, because I don't think they look at it as a business also.
I don't know if it's a business for IMA, but it's a body of doctors that probably is driven by its own agenda. By it probably has its own dynamics in politics, but it definitely doesn't feel like patient interest that is what they're
High
driven by.
priority.
Yeah.
So, so then, as you're saying, there's probably more adoption. Probably the doctors that signed up with you probably are happy that this platform exists at this moment. How is that? Is it more like vindication, validation?
Yeah, it's amazing. There are 50,000 doctors signed up with us, man. 50,000.
That's
Uh,
incredible.
yeah, and they're active. They consult, they treat. What they can't, they refer. We've done 1 million consultations, by the way, till today. 1 million.
Wow.
We've done 1 million free consultations till today.
So this 50,000, is it because there are so many different languages you have to cater in? And is that why there's 50,000? Or can you handle that with fewer than 50,000 doctors? I would imagine this is 1 million until now, or this is per month?
No, 1 million up to now.
In about 3.5 years. And
Yeah.
during COVID alone, you'll probably hit 500,000.
Yeah, the number is significantly higher during COVID and the lockdown. But I won't say half, but it is pretty big. Like the jump was, I think, 3x, probably now 4x is what I don't remember the latest data we saw, but it's pretty big, the jump due to COVID. Yeah, so why did doctors end up registering with us? Man, like it was all organic. It was just like our content. We didn't pay anything to get traffic onto our app and web. We didn't pay anything to get doctors to sign up with us. They just did. They found us and they did. And why do they continue to stick around? Because I don't know, we give them an opportunity to communicate and connect with patients through content. We give them an opportunity to consult patients across the country where they otherwise wouldn't be able to reach. It's a way for them to earn, to help, to build their own brand. There are multiple reasons. In fact, like there were a couple of doctors who were so active on our platform, we ended up hiring them and getting them on our roles because they're so good and they loved us so much. So, like our doctor hiring also just happens quite often from just, these doctors who come and sign up and they're consulting part-time. Sometimes we just end up hiring them full-time. So it's like, so far it's a, well, I mean, not to jinx it, but so far like the pieces are falling into place. Now, like time will tell how much bigger we can make it, how much better can we make it, how well-rounded the solution can be, how smooth the whole process can be. So there's like a lot to be done in that regard. Like if you suppose went to our website today, you might find it a little clunky, given like the super slick apps and websites you'd be used to. But we built a very basic one. There's a lot going on there. The process needs to be simplified. So like there's always work, there's progress to be made. But like the first thing is to first figure out what is the primary use case you're solving.
You have some marquee investors. You have Omidyar, you have Nexus Venture Partners, you have Shunwei. What was their main inclination to fund this kind of a business, right? Of course, it's loved by such a huge audience. They're probably also feeling validated that they bet on MyUpchar early, given the current scenario, etc., which probably also drives a lot more signups, utilization, access, and these are the moments where technology really comes into play. What was that they went after it? And I'm sure there's always a little bit of pressure when you're on the venture capital treadmill to start delivering numbers, etc. How has that journey been?
Um, for us, it's been pretty good. I think we've been fortunate to have a very supportive board. We like all of us have heard stories about like very meddling boards or activist investors, especially in the early stage. None of that's, we've been like very lucky, none of that sort with us. Like the only question we typically get is, how can we help? Well, of course, you also have to like update. So what's going on and how can we help? I mean, can't ask for more. So, and they are very helpful. So I think we got very, very lucky with our choice of investors and the board that we formed. So like, yeah, I mean, probably not the answer you were looking for, but no, it's been good, man. It's been good.
I think the more curious question would be, when you're in the process of figuring out the monetization, revenue, and growth of the platform, how did you sell them on this vision?
Oh, what was our pitch to investors when we were raising? Is that the question?
That's right. That was part of that question.
Oh, okay, got it. Well, I mean, our pitch was essentially at the time when we raised Series A was, look, we were already doing like close to 9 million visitors a month, and it was just continuous growth month after month after month. And we're like, look, here's our story. There's a huge population that doesn't have access to healthcare. It also doesn't have access to healthcare information in their own language. So we're going to build a lot of content, give it to them for free, have them come to our platform over and over. And then we're going to stack on a bunch of services and monetize. So at that point, we didn't know how we were going to monetize. Our pitch was essentially, look, if we are able to get enough traffic early on, fast enough, then we become the place where their healthcare journey starts. And if we build that trust and space in their mind, then over time we will figure out how to monetize. The world at that point was that some people were willing to believe that yes, how back in 2002 it was eyeballs. Let's collect eyeballs. We'll figure out monetization later. And then a lot of people did that. There was a lot of destruction of money value, and we were like, eyeballs doesn't matter. That's shit. Now it's all about business model, unit economics. But we went back like 360, and we were like, no, it's still going to be eyeballs. It's still going to be eyeballs. It's still going to be eyeballs. And then we figure out business models. The reason, again, I come back to is that the vernacular web is where the English web was 15, 20 years back. And you can't possibly know what your business models and your revenue sources are going to be until you yourself and the users have had time to be online with each other, right? So yes, we could have made up some shit and said, this is how we're going to do it, this is how we're going to do it. But we didn't honestly know. So we just said that we don't honestly know. But what we do know and what we have proof for is that we can get a lot of people to consume our content and interact with us. And there was ample proof of that. And then it's a matter of an investor's foresight or risk appetite to say, can the story of the content continue? Will we be able to actually find a way to monetize? There, I guess we got the answer yes 3 times, and that's how at least 3 times. There were others who were very generously willing to invest, but we went with Shunway, Umidyar, and Nexus, and yeah, I mean, so that's essentially how it went down. It was just basically showing the vision, sharing the vision, and having some early proof for it.
How does the next decade look like now in 2020?
Decade is too long, man. Like if you would ask me what would the next 10 months look like, I would have said, still had that same reaction. Who knows what the next 10 months look like? I mean, it used to be like earlier you'd plan for a year or a quarter or, like 10 weeks. It's down to like planning for 10 days right now. Like things are changing so rapidly every day. And every other day, like uh, something or the other changes on the ground, which completely makes you uh, change direction, like kind of do a 360, 180-degree turn midair. Um, and
Acrobats. So
yeah,
for COVID, I mean, I'm guessing lockdown, COVID-19, etc. What has been the shift in the business? Has something changed? What are you guys doing something differently?
no, I would say like nothing has like changed. I mean, our business was healthcare, and we are just doing a whole lot more of it. So it's not like we were trying to sell uh, fitness equipment, and now suddenly we realize, oh look, nobody's going to buy fitness equipment and we need to change. We were literally in. We were think of us as like a hospital in the cloud. Like that's who we were, and nobody's been asked to not go online, so we can still keep operating. Unlike a lot of our hospitals who've been told to not do anything but COVID work, and which is why a lot of hospitals are actually struggling. There isn't a lot of recognition of that in the media. But if you are in the industry, or if you know people who are within the healthcare industry, hospitals are hurting. Many of them may not be able to pay salaries in the next 2 months or so on and so forth. You like completely shut down their revenue stream. Right? So what's going to happen? Another thing that I hear is that um, a lot of times medical staff is unable to get out of areas which are under complete quarantine. And yes, the cops are helping, but sometimes you get stuck. In other places, I've heard of stories. These are stories that I've like personally heard from doctors. Is the places that they live in, the colonies, the buildings, residents have come there and said, "Look, she's on COVID duty. If she's going to go to the hospital, she can't come back here. You're not allowed back here." I mean, isn't that ridiculous? So, on the one hand, we do this tali and thali and we applaud our Corona warriors and we give them tributes and we share WhatsApp forwards. But here's a person, living in our building, and we completely ostracize them for actually doing the work that we're applauding them for.
Humans are
And yeah,
inherently selfish.
people are inherently assholes. I'll say what you're thinking, but not say because it's your podcast. But
I think
also,
we're just feeding off from each other's energy.
yeah, I know, man. I'm so sorry. I used a profanity on your podcast, but
No, everything is allowed on this podcast. Um,
um,
so I know that you have an initiative for COVID-19. If you are making any profits from sales of medicines, is it that you're contributing
yeah,
towards?
so we start. I think we got like at some point we had checked. It was now we don't even have time to check what the increase in our medicine sales is, but at one point it was 5x of where we were. And what we decided was that whatever money we're going to make, whatever profit we're going to make from medicine sales, we're going to donate it back to PM Cares Fund. So yes, it's a good time to make a lot of profit, but we just don't get ourselves to make profit of a a global tragedy. Um, we're pretty sure if we do the right thing now, it'll karma.
It'll
It'll
come
be
back
fine.
around. It'll come back around.
Just want to do the
So
right thing.
MyUpchar is obviously growing fast and
Uh,
scaling. While a lot of companies are laying off folks, are you guys hiring? How do people get in touch with you? Do you want to do a shout out?
Sure, man. Thanks a lot for that. We are actively hiring engineers, we're hiring doctors, we're hiring people in operations, we're hiring pharmacists. If you're a medical person of any sort, shape, size, or form, please do get in touch with us. You can write to us at contact@myupchar.com or hr@myupchar.com. You can go on LinkedIn and you can ping us on our page. You can ping Rajat or me or anybody you can find on LinkedIn who works at MyUpchar and just say, hey, I want to join your team. And the message will get routed to HR. But if you wanted to be routed super fast, find Rajat or me. And
I'll leave the links and other things that you share along with wherever this podcast goes. So hopefully you
I'll
get
share that.
some rock stars to join MyUpchar. Um,
Thank you.
Manuj, thanks so much for your time. This has been phenomenal. And that brings us to the end of this episode of Stars and Startups with me, Varun Bumidi. Hope you enjoy the show. Do leave us your comments, feedback, wherever you find this podcast, or do write into me. And of course, if you'd like to get in touch with Manuj or Rajat of MyUpchar, you'd like to explore opportunities with them, I will leave their contact information along with the show notes. Hope you enjoy the show. Stay tuned for a lot more exciting episodes coming your way on Stars and Startups. Thanks for listening. If you're a startup or a small team, do check out my startup, Wellmo.in. We enable small businesses access affordable health insurance for less than 2000 rupees for a 3 lakh hospitalization cover. Does that sound good to you? Yep, you can get started easily on our easy to use platform app.wellmo.in and have your employees covered today. If you have any questions, do reach out to me. I'll be happy to talk more about Wellmo.